Hello there. In this video, I am going to cover the topic of computer organization. And just to help us get started, we're going to go and start from the very beginning with your view, perhaps, of what a computer is. But I do expect you to have already viewed the video regarding compute, which was a previous video where I discussed the verb compute versus the noun computer. All right, most of us sometimes, if we haven't had any formal education regarding computers, we probably view computers like this, where it's basically you can put stuff into it and stuff comes out of it. And it's just kind of like a mystery, right? Like this box is just does stuff, but we don't exactly know how, right? We want to make sure we give you more details. So while this is sort of okay, it's not okay in that you will have limited abilities if you don't really understand the system you're using. So let's go ahead and explore a little bit more um, the mysteries behind this computer. All right, so as I mentioned, you should have already viewed this in a previous video, but if you haven't, here's what we're going to use to define a computer. It's an electronic device that accepts input, and that input can be stored, retrieved, processed, and then eventually the result can be output as a result, right? So here are the terms: electronic. We've got input device here, output device over here. But unlike the previous picture, we've got a little bit more of the magic revealed here. Inside of the computer, there's actually some processing happening, and there's some storage that's required, and the processing can store things and retrieve things from storage, right? That gets us a little closer, but let's go a little bit deeper. So when we go deeper, we're starting to look at the idea of computer organization, meaning we've got more parts that are involved, but we also want to explore how these parts are logically arranged and how they're interconnected. How is it that they actually work together, the different parts? Okay, so you notice I removed, so this is processing here. If we were to remove that lid almost, right, that idea of processing and break it down further, processing is actually handled by these components. And actually there's more, but we're just going to do a basic look at this, right? All right, so processing is handled by the central processing unit, or CPU, right? Short CPU. And that is further broken down into two subparts. So we've got the control unit and we've got the arithmetic and logic unit. All right. And then over here for storage, instead of using the term storage like we have here, we're going to actually use the term memory unit. Okay, but it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with the next piece. We're going to break down each of the parts individually now. We've got an input device. An example of an input device is a keyboard. What does it do? It allows people to supply data to the computers. It's not just keyboards, right? So I'll give you another one, a mouse, for example. When you click down with a mouse, you're able to send signals into the computer. In both cases, when a mouse is clicked or when a keyboard is pressed, you're really just sending binary signals in, right? So for us, it looks like letters, but in reality, you're sending some on and off combinations to the computer. All right, let's go ahead and continue. We've also got this output device. And the output device allows us as humans basically to receive data from a computer. So the computer itself, which is this middle rectangle, this entire green one, is going to send signals out, binary signals out, and it's going to send them out to some output devices, such as a monitor. Once the monitor receives those signals, it'll show us something on the screen, right? Another example is a speaker. Those signals will come out as binary, but the speakers will convert them into sounds very likely that we'll be able to make sense of, such as my sound in this video right now. I'm sorry, my voice in this video. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So memory is the computer part that is responsible for storing data or instructions, right? So it can, down here you see some binary values. This might be a program, right? And then you see this binary value here, it's being stored. This might be a letter or it might be a number. We don't know. But what we do understand is that the purpose of memory is to save that data for later use or for temporary use. There's current memory. That means that's memory that the computer and more than likely, specifically, that's current memory is data that the central processing unit is working on at that moment in time. So for example, this video is playing on your computer right now. It's stored, or it's running and being held in current memory. But there's also long-term memory. All right. So with long-term memory, that's where we save things on the computer for maybe later use in a month, in a year, in 2 years. So that's a different type of memory. That's a long-term memory. Okay. The central processing unit, which is this white square here, is also known as the CPU. So I mentioned CPU, C for central, P for processing, U for unit. It's a combination of the control unit and the ALU. All right. There are actually other parts, but we're not going to get into those. All right. But for us, central processing unit, CU, and the ALU. Let's take a look at each one of these. So the control unit is responsible for kind of like directing traffic, like this officer here, right? We've got data coming from all directions. Each of the cars is kind of like some binary data that's making its way in or out, going this way and that way. The control unit is going to get instructions from the memory. So how does the control unit know how to do? Because it's got instructions that it got from the memory. How do they get into the memory? From a human. All right. So the control unit is going to follow those instructions, and then it's going to make sense of what to do with all the signals that are coming in, and it'll figure out what signals to send out through output. And if it needs to save or store stuff or retrieve things from memory, it's going to do that. But the control unit is kind of orchestrating and coordinating that. The arithmetic logic unit, that's responsible for math, basic math with binary, and pretty much kind of answering like true or false types of questions. Right? Those are the types of calculations and computations that it's performing. All right. So, in a nutshell, this is what we just went over. At this point, hopefully you have a better understanding of what each of the components does and how they're interrelated and work together, right? You can always take this and make it a little bit simpler, such as this. So we cover it up and we don't look at the CU, we don't look at um, the arithmetic and logic unit, right? But we should always be familiar with what's going on inside of here and what all these components are all doing. Because even if we look at processing generally, we should still be familiar with what is happening on the inside and why. And then that way, if we live our lives kind of always just interacting with computers in this way, it does help for us to know a little bit about what's going on inside. Because now this is not just some giant green magical box that's doing stuff. We know that inside of that computer, it's making all the magic that we're enjoying possible because of a central processing unit. And that central processing unit has a control unit and an arithmetic logic unit. And together, that's working with memory to make everything that we experience, the videos, the games, um, the work, it's all making it possible because of all these components and how they're organized and how they work together. Hopefully that gave you a good understanding or a better understanding of how computer organization makes your experience with computers possible.